everybody, it's Bob Smith. This is the Outdated Wrestling Hour podcast. I want to make an announcement here. You're going to hear this little placard in front of all of our shows for the next month or two. Because I am having some relatively complicated surgery and don't know how long I'm going to be off my feet, we have recorded about a dozen podcasts in advance of the surgery and post-haste, because I don't know how long the recovery period is going to be. So if we make any references on these shows to, well, stuff that's already happened or stuff that was several weeks ago, forgive us. It's simply a situation where we had to do what we had to do to get these shows finished. Hey, enough of my yakking. Let's have some fun. It's the new Outdated Wrestling Hour podcast. We now return you to our regularly scheduled program. It's your one-stop shop for great wrestling. It's the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Ray Russell brings a host of great shows right to your device. There's the Wrestling Memory Grenade, Regional Wrestling, the Wrestling Stoop with Bob Roop, the Amazing Puro Academy Show, Retro Wrestling Review with Gene Jackson, Dave Dynasty's long-running hit, Wrestling Nostalgia, Monday Warfare, Raw vs. Nitro, the hilarious Other Ship podcast, and a whole lot more. Great shows and great guests, but where do you find all this stuff? Really simple. Try logging on to WrestleCopia.com. As I like to say, it's your one-stop shop for great wrestling memories. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the latest edition of the Outdated Wrestling Hour. It's another edition of the Favorite Things podcast with longtime podcaster Liam Savage. Yeah, favorite things. You know, I've never been asked about my favorite things. You know, Bob didn't like my answers, but let's talk about food. You know, my favorite sandwich is a BLT. But not bacon. Bouillon cubes. Makes it crunchier. My favorite drink, Boone's Farm Strawberry Hill. My favorite dessert, 2-stick popsicles. Just introduce the show, please. Who asked you? I'm just going along with the format. You don't even know what a format is. Say the name of the show. It's the Outdated Wrestling Hour. After the hospital stay, my favorite soup is clear. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Outdated Wrestling Hour podcast. My name is Bob Smith. You might remember me from the old days with Pro Wrestling Illustrated magazine, WCW, and the hits just kept on coming in the 80s and 90s. How's everybody doing? Our co-host Joe Puccio will be with us in just a few moments. We're going to discuss how things have changed over the years, because we got to look back, because that's what we do. And then on to Liam Savage, frequent guest on the show, and we're going to talk about his favorite things. The latest in our series of Favorite Things podcasts. We're going to have more wrestling people coming on, talking about their favorite stuff from when they were younger. Hang on for a couple of seconds. Get yourself your usual snack or beverage. Flavor Aid, maybe, if you're on a budget like we all are. Maybe PBR in a can, given the times. Anyway, hold on for a second or two. We will be right back with you.
This is Joe Walsh. One thing I do when I'm not playing rock and roll is get on the air as an amateur radio operator. Also called ham radio, is a communication service provided by ordinary people just like you and me. We have a national emergency communication system in place 24/7, 365. Find out more about amateur radio at arrl.org/what is ham radio. See you on the air.
Hello, everybody. My name is Bob Smith. You might remember me from Pro Wrestling Illustrated magazine all those years ago, 80s and 90s. And WCW and Wrestling's Main Event. Wow. And most recently, I was privileged to have my name in Inside the Ropes. How do you like that? And we have Joe Puccio, the co-host here. Joey Goes to Hollywood? Or he's doing the thing with the name in the box again. This one I don't understand at all.
Hello there, Bob. Look, I mean, once I say the name of the band, I'm sure you're going to know it, or maybe you'll
Oh, you kidding? I worked for Record World when
Exactly.
Frankie Goes to Hollywood was a big deal,
Frankie
and I
Goes
was
to Hollywood.
pulling my hair out.
There
You
you
know,
go.
I got a job at a record store. I'm in my 20s and going, this is great. We're going to rock out. And there was no rock on the radio. Not rock like I know rock.
Hey, look,
We had Frankie Goes to Hollywood and Depeche Mode and Thompson Twins.
Yeah. Well, I know we kind of butt heads on this because I'm in the middle because I love rock. I love classic rock. I love 80s rock, love rock before that. I love everything. But I also love the Thompson Twins. And yeah, I'll even say Frankie Goes to Hollywood. You remember Relax, right? Remember that song?
How could I forget?
You don't want to remember.
Now, look, here's the deal. You always stay in love with the bands that you grew up with.
Right.
And by the time I was working at Record World, I'd say it was somewhere, and my mind is getting fuzzy these days. It was probably between 79 and 81 that I worked for that company. I was there for a while, and I managed 2 or 3 of the stores. The problem is, at that point, the classic rockers, the Woodstock Nation was over. The bands we grew up listening to there was a few. Crosby, Still, Nash was still around. The Doobies were still around. Grateful Dead was still rocking, you know. But it was almost like 2 different things. They were considered the elder statesmen, whereas this new wave sound.
Yeah.
But now there was a whole new breed of act coming in, and it was MTV oriented. They were very visual acts. Whereas, and you know, Lord Michaels, I read somewhere, Lord Michaels, when Devo was on their show in the late 70s for the first time, he flipped. He loved it. And he said, from now on, I want to book musical acts that have a visual component to what they do, as opposed to just 5 guys, you know, jamming away. So the 70s had a lot of jamming and a lot of great musicians like the Claptons and the Stevie Ray Vaughan. You just go down the list of all the ones that were like really Jeff Beck, all of them. But that changed to a more visual component because of MTV. You know what I'm saying? It's like what you looked at meant as much as what it sounded like.
And it makes sense what you're saying, because if Lorne Michaels had the foresight to think that as well, I mean, he's right? Because that was the beginning of the MTV era when Devo had the big song with Whip It. You know, he's right? Because, you know, that was a visual show and, you know, you wanted to actually not just hear the music, but you wanted to sort of entice the viewers as well by visually as well.
Well, here's the deal. If you watch a musical act on Saturday Night Live now, the productions are unbelievable. They look like Broadway shows. The set they're on is entirely different. It's not you don't see the regular background anymore. It's a set. It's a staging.
Yeah.
Like I think Sabrina Carpenter did a song with what looked like was her bedroom. You know, it's an act now as well as music, which goes to what I always say about pop music. People buy personas now more than music. It's whether you like the artist's personality. I think it means more than the actual tunes and the songwriting craft and the sound. I really do.
Do you think that's just now, or do you think that was in the 80s?
No,
too,
it's been going on. It's been going on since the 80s. The 80s changed everything. Whether that's good or bad, it's up to the ear and eye of the beholder. I personally was always smart enough to realize, well, my tastes are a little different. There's still indie music stores. There's still indie record stores back when I was working. There was still blues music. There was still jazz music. My tastes were always older than I was. That's true. That's a good way to put it. I had old man taste at 17. I was listening to Chick Corea and Return to Forever, and I was listening to B.B. King, and I was listening to Muddy Waters, and, you know, I had discovered blues through a PBS show called Soundstage during the late 70s.
Sure. Yeah,
and the very first one was a tribute to Muddy Waters, and it changed my life. I always say that whenever anybody interviews me about my music career, that Soundstage changed my life. I went right from Grand Funk and Black Sabbath to Sun Seals and the Alligator Records roster. It changed me instantly. I just felt it was grittier, more realistic, tuneful, and I love guitar players anyway.
I am sort of the same in a sense in that, obviously I'm younger. So when I'm growing up in the 80s and I'm getting into bands like the Stones, how many people, teenagers, kids in junior high school, are getting into music really heavily and they're getting into the Stones? And not only are they listening to the 80s Stone stuff, but then they're going back and they're looking at the 60s and 70s stuff. So I was kind of similar in that sense. But the difference is I loved classic rock growing up, but I also loved a lot of the contemporary rock and the contemporary pop. So I didn't, completely go against what was going on at the time, but I really loved it. I mean, I remember a friend of mine introducing me to The Who, junior high school, and he was like, "You've never heard of The Who, Tommy?" And I was like, I remember the conversation, and I was like, I kind of know who they are. I don't know. And I think he brought in the cassette for me, and and I put it on. I was like, "This is awesome." So it's kind of similar.
There you go. The beautiful part about pop music or music in general, it's a big wide world out there. And I always tell people, don't be afraid to experiment. And the other thing I tell people is if you are a fuddy-duddy like me, you'd be surprised how many people from the 70s and 80s are still recording. You just don't know about it because the radio
Oh, yeah.
won't play it.
Yep.
And there's some really good records out there by older artists. And they still sound the same. I implore you. Like, I was just reading something that Rusty Young's wife posted. Rusty Young was probably the founding member of Poco back in the day.
Mhm.
He passed away some years ago. But, they made records into right before they died, and people don't even know about them because the radio won't play them
Yeah.
because they got a gray hair. Imagine Lorne Michaels saying, all right, here's the Guess Who on next week's show. It's not going to happen.
Right.
Even
Well-
even though they're on a major tour, it won't happen because he's looking for the visual component more than the music.
And there are very few classic artists that are going to make new music that it's going to get publicized to the
Right.
extent of somebody like the exception would be, I just mentioned them, but I'll bring them up because it's timely. The Stones. The Stones are coming out with a new album in July. They just released 2 new singles. I actually listened to them earlier today and they're great. I mean, the songs really are good. I mean, I have high hopes for it. So there's very, very few artists like that. They're the anomaly. They're the exception.
They never change. Stones never change.
Yeah.
They never change. Thank goodness. It's
Yeah.
comforting. They're almost like comfort food to people our age or my age. I wasn't even the biggest Stones fan, but I have such an appreciation the fact that they can still put on a tremendous concert and they haven't lost a step. Really, the guys
They
that are
haven't.
still there. So you got to give them credit for that. Well, anyway, wrestling.
Oh, right.
Old,
This is the
old
wrestling. Now.
wrestling. Yeah, wrestling.
Yeah.
Well, we're talking about outdated bands anyway. So now we present first in what we hope is a continuing series of segments entitled Then versus Now. It's the way I grew up watching pro wrestling compared to the way it is now. And I have 10 instances of how things have changed. And Bob, 10 minutes from now, got so excited about this that he created his own theme song for this segment. Would you like to hear it, Joe?
Yes, I would.
All right, here it is. Then voices now. Yeah. That's it. To what I paid this guy, and this is all he comes up with? I can't. What? It's too late now. It's on the air. Oh my gosh. But anyway, welcome to Them Versus Now. Now, Joe, I want your feedback on these, okay? There are 10 type of things that happen that have changed noticeably over the years. And I think they're a little different. It's not going to be the usual thing. So I'm hoping you enjoy this. You ready? All right. Then time limit draws. This one goes 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Most of the cards I saw in the 70s had at least one time limit draw on every card. More often than not, in the opening match between 2 equal talents, maybe 2 prelim guys or 2 veteran guys that are going on it. And back then they could get away with a draw. They were equal status as wrestlers at that point. Now, there's some sort of run-ins or outside interference all the time. In 1 week of SmackDown, I counted 7 instances of other people getting involved. Just those 2 shows. There doesn't seem to be anything even called time limit matches anymore. In fact, when you watch wrestling on television, the announcer doesn't even say one fall or one fall to a finish or one fall with this certain time period. Those are passé. They were too sports-like, I guess, because that's how sports were always timed. I guess, even boxing matches are timed. So, passé. What time is it? We'll never know.
So I'm thinking as you go down this list, and I this is the first I'm hearing about it as we're recording this.
Right.
I was a big fan of time limit draws. I know that's a weird thing to say, but you said sometimes it was preliminary guys. I always kind of dug that as well, which is weird to say, but not to say I didn't want to see it between two name wrestlers. But seeing like the guys like Jose Luis Rivera and Steve Lombardi, let's just say, like going to a time limit draw, a 20-minute, whatever it was, 15 minutes. I don't know. There was something about that it was kind of cool to get to see these guys who don't normally get to show themselves or show a lot of what they can do in the ring. And then you actually got to see them work. There was no decisive winner. It was just kind of an oddity. And I always kind of liked that aspect of it. But in going even further and talking about, let's say, the more prevalent ones, which were the name wrestlers going to a draw, it's such a great thing because it was a way to prolong, let's say, a feud. It was a way that you didn't have to have a screw job finish. It was a way that, let's say, they didn't want to necessarily have one guy over the other. It was a way to give them time to wrestle, maybe build to a rematch. There were just so many different things that I really always liked about that. And it's a shame that you really don't see that very often at all anymore.
It's absolutely true. And, I agree with what you say. You would see that these wrestlers that get killed on television, Johnny Rods,
Yep.
and they go to a time-minute draw. You see the talents in both guys, and you realize they can wrestle as well as anyone else. It's just there was that certain factor that the promoters just didn't think they could carry something bigger than that for whatever reason. A lot of those guys were prelims who become repackaged. If you look at King Kong Bundy, he wrestled in the WWF in the early 80s he was still a huge guy. He had a full mane of, brown hair. He leaves and comes back as King Kong Bundy just like 3 years later. Nobody even recognized it was him.
Right.
And Hacksaw Duggan was a prelim guy in the WWF before he went to Mid-South, and Bill Watson made Hacksaw Duggan out of him. So there's 1,000 guys that were doing prelims that they didn't see it at first, or they had to go somewhere else to develop themselves. You're right. It's one of the fun things about wrestling is to see somebody starting out, getting the snot belted out of them, and then they come back 2 years later, and all of a sudden they're fully formed and ready to be stars.
Yeah.
Trouble is with today's wrestling, they don't allow that. In fact, there aren't even prelim guys now.
Well,
Really?
that's a different story, right? That's something
Yeah.
that's different than it is, even if it's not on your list. There's no such thing as preliminary wrestlers anymore.
No, they're all considered superstars or whatever you want to call them.
I mean, some are obviously not pushed as they're there to basically make others look better, but it's not like it was back then where
No.
the guys were just there literally to take the moves and to lose the matches. That's obsolete.
All right, here's our next then and now. Ready? I lied. This is about ring announcers. Most ring announcers in the old days were older men with suits or even tuxedos, right? Howard Finkel wore a tux. Now, ring announcers are both male and female. All well and good. Nothing wrong with that. But they stand there caterwauling like a toddler trying his first atomic fireball candy. It's unbelievable. I mean, back then, and they gave weights and measures and all that stuff, and now it's just the ring announcers act, and some of them, oh gosh, what is it, Kyle Davis on the NWA? Holy smokes. Can't we just find out who they are? Seriously, I don't think this is better. I think this is worse. The fact that the ring announcer is considered part of the show.
Yeah.
Talk about selling the sizzle, not the steak, Jackson. I'm telling you.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that as well. Definitely prefer the old school ring announcers by saying they're part of the show now. It's become part of the production in WWE. The woman, not sure her name offhand, but she is one of those ones that she enunciates and she just makes sure that every little thing she has to say it with conviction and she has to, it's just, and again, that might sound like that's a good thing. And I mean, of course you should be passionate about your job and you should not half-ass it, but it's such a show. It's so phony. So I definitely prefer it back the way it was. I did actually, I know there was, she was very polarizing, but I did actually have a soft spot for Samantha Irvin.
Irvin.
Was that her name? And I know a lot of people either loved her or hated her. There was a lot of people that didn't like her theatrics. Something about her, I don't know why, her passion, I did kind of like her. I kind of got used to her after a while, but she is the exception. The majority of them, it is a little grating, admittedly.
To me, it's all preposterous waste of time. I'm sorry. It doesn't enhance the matches. I want to see some wrestling. It takes them 12 minutes to walk to the ring now, and now
Yeah.
a ring announcement takes another 3. Seriously now. Listen, this is the modern thing. They're not only selling the scissors, they're selling the napkins. Yeah. The
Yeah.
old thing, sizzle not the steak. Now you're getting a
Uh-huh.
napkin along with your sizzle anyway. Ugh. Now here's another one for you. Then versus now. Announcer Larry Nelson of the AWA. Do you remember what a time when there was a celebrity in the crowd, they all made a big deal about it, and they would actually bring him on and introduce him and do a short little interview? Larry Nelson of the AWA interviewed music stars like the last surviving member of the Mills Brothers, whose first hit Paper Doll reached number 1 in 1943. Here's the deal. The interview was in 1989. So, back then, even the most nebulous of stars got a shout out. Now, today, quick quiz. Name all the hip hop and rap stars that appeared in the last 2 WrestleManias. Endless.
Right.
Am I right? Not to
Yeah.
mention Jelly Rolls and, Jelly Rolls and, Charleston Chews, whatever else.
Cinnamon buns. Yeah.
Yeah, Cinnabons. Yeah, I don't know what to say, but this is a change. Back then, when even the most meager celebrity would just show up, they'd make a big deal. Now they let the celebrities in the ring. Incredible. Personally, whenever they let the celebrities do something physical, I just call it a gimmick match. I really don't count it. I have never enjoyed it. I don't enjoy it going back to Mr. T. I just don't.
I don't know. This might just be me, and we always talk about what you grew up with and how you remember that stuff more fondly than obviously the stuff of today, which we're kind of comparing it to. I did really like the Mr. T connection. I loved that growing up, but that might be an age thing. When I was growing up and Mr. T got involved and Cyndi Lauper got involved, that was what I knew. I mean, those were like the big stars of the day. So to me, they were huge stars getting involved in something that I loved, which was wrestling. But it's hard for me to compare it now because the stars that are coming in today, of course, there are some of them that might be big name stars, so to speak. But you're having like you said, anybody, any kind of hip hop star that might have one random hit on YouTube or something like that. So it's people that I really don't know. So I don't know. I don't know if it's just that they're watering it down, or is it just that I'm so out of touch with today's celebrities that maybe these are big stars and I just have no idea if they are or not.
Wrestling's its own animal. It doesn't need the outside people. It just doesn't. It doesn't. Show me the celebrity that made a bigger gate. Maybe Mr. T, because it was unique. Other than that, it's getting so run of the mill now. Who cares? All right, back to more ring announcing, old time stuff. In the WWF in the old days, a ring announcer would announce by name the timekeeper, the doctor at ringside, the state athletic commission officials, and the names of the referees. You would hear the hometowns of the wrestlers as well as their weights. In Indianapolis, the WWA, they always announced who the referees were. A lot of the Southern territories also named the referees. Now, most TV matches don't even acknowledge the referees' names, maybe in passing with the announcer, but they don't announce them to the crowd. You can't even see where the ring bell is located anymore. State athletic commissions? and weights aren't mentioned now. Nobody's weights. It's not weighing in at 220 pounds. They don't mention the weights. It was super heavyweights or lightweights. With some of the smaller guys, I guarantee it'd be humiliating if they actually put the real weights in there. You'd be shocked. But again, you got all that sports-like information in the old days. Now it's him versus him, ding, ding.
Yeah. I'm not even sure. So the men, they don't even announce their weights anymore?
No.
Is that so? Because I know that they don't do it with the women. They haven't done that in a long time. But I don't even know if it kind of just passed me by, if I didn't even realize that they didn't do it with the men anymore either.
No weights, no heights, no nothing.
Nothing, yeah.
I do think they do give town names now. They stopped even doing that. I think they're back to giving a city and then just the name in WWE.
Yeah.
AEW, your guess is as good as mine. I don't know.
It doesn't, that's one of those things that doesn't bother me as much. I'm kind of neutral on it. For me, I would just like to know where they're from. But as far as the weights, the heights, I don't know. That stuff doesn't really make as much of a difference to me. But I could see where you're coming from for that, for sure.
Why would you not announce Obafemi's height and weight? You're trying to get the guy over. You can see he's big. If you find out he's a literal 6'10" and 390, I think that's kind of impressive.
unless they're giving you the worked numbers, like the exaggerations. That's
Well,
another
yeah,
thing.
they always do.
Yeah.
Andre was never 7'4".
Right.
All right. Then the old days, the ring steps were usually wood. Now, ring steps are those big metal double platforms, and it's anybody guess who makes those. I have no clue. Where do you get ring steps? They must be custom made for wrestling and boxing.
That's a good one. I never thought about that actually until you
Yeah,
mentioned it.
because in the old
The ring
days, they would
step.
rip apart the Sheik would
Yeah.
rip apart and, bring a piece of wood, a shard of wood in the ring and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Bulldog Brower would throw it around and it would fall apart and stuff like that. But now they're giant, probably heavy aluminum, I would imagine.
I would think aluminum. Did they do it though? Because I know the aluminum ones that they have now, they make a pretty big noise when the guys get thrown into them. Maybe that was part of the reason for the sound effects. Because I don't know that the wood ones really did that.
It must not hurt because they do it every week. I mean, in real life, it must not be that bad. It looks terrible, and it's one of the best works they do. Because if everybody gets up from it,
I know it doesn't have an impressive sound when they get thrown into there. So that might, again, that might be something to do with it.
probably the whole thing. Now, back in the day, when things got too bloody on TV, some organizations would optically censor the matches. They'd put an X across the screen, or they'd turn the camera away from the ring, or they'd do a wide shot so things wouldn't look too bloody. Now, TV cable networks like USA Network, TNT, TBS, and Spike have proudly presented wrestling matches featuring guys getting their foreheads sliced open with pizza cutters, men being thrown into announcers' tables that collapse, people getting hit in the head with ring steps, guys being jabbed in the head with screwdrivers, people being punched in the face with a large ring on their fist, fire being thrown in wrestlers' eyes, people being slammed on thumbtacks, and other delights for the small fry. You remember I worked for WCW magazine that was associated with the company, and they were very, very strict. And I know that TBS and TNT in those days were real strict about violent content. Now you can practically guillotine these guys. They don't even flinch. I want to know what the difference was between the 80s and 90s till now, because now it seems like everything goes. Nothing is too much.
It is to an extent, but you know how now they have that gimmick where if they'll show the replay or they'll show the highlights on television, they do the black and white stream, which is also kind of different because, like you said, in the past they would just kind of show like a censored red X, which obviously looks a lot crazier than just putting it in black and white.
Right, but AEW is not censoring anything.
Right, AEW is probably not
even
going to do
close.
that.
In fact, if they do a show without somebody garroting someone else, it's considered a boring show. Then, this is a fun one. This is just fun. This one is, I'm not complaining on this one. Long time ago, Texas promoter Paul Bosch would do live commercials for sausages between matches. Screaming Chicago legend Bob Luce, also a promoter, would do car dealership ads with a wrestler going, go out and get this car, right? Or something like that. Gorilla Monsoon would do charity spots for juvenile diabetes because he suffered from it himself. Abdul the Butcher was part of a musical soda commercial in Japan. And Randy Savage would hawk Slim Jims, right? But it was rare that you'd see wrestlers doing spots. Now, virtually every major WWE star has done some sort of an ad, right? Usually included in the body of the broadcast. LA Knight seems to have become the wrestling face of Slim Jims. He's on all the Slim Jim ads now. Several wrestlers such as Drew McIntyre, Bianca Belair, and Jey Uso have done ads for Cricket Wireless. Cody Rhodes did a spot for, Wheatley American Vodka?
Yeah. It's so good you could drink it neatly, right?
Vodka. Most amazingly, Dominic Mysterio had Dude Wipes branding on his ring gear. Dude Wipes. And now suddenly Rhea Ripley seems to be getting a lot of endorsements. All I know is if you watch an episode of Raw and you watch the ads, I'd say about 40% of them have a wrestler on them. Seriously.
Yeah,
you don't think about that kind of thing. But remember tax season? It was whatever it was, H.R. Block, whatever. It was all the wrestlers were singing about doing their taxes.
They were singing a well-known song. What the hell was it?
It was a Wilson Phillips song, I swear to God.
Oh, okay.
I don't know the name of the song, but it's Wilson for you. Jeez.
Hold on.
Yeah, hold on. It's probably what it was. And I was in the record store in those days, which is why I was miserable. Okay, here we are. All right, back then, huge or super strong wrestlers like Andre and Ken Patera and Hasex Calhoun, Don Leo Jonathan, and King Kong Bundy would take on two opponents in handicap matches. I researched this. I could only find 5 instances of handicap matches in the major organizations in 2025. They don't do it much anymore.
The handicap match I got really introduced to with Andre, as most people probably did. And it's funny because when I first saw Andre and they did that on TV all the time, he wrestled 2 guys, 3 guys, whatever it was, it made sense. Whenever it was somebody else, even if it was, let's say, a King Kong Bundy, who was, a big guy, whatever, but he was no Andre. He wasn't supposed to be a giant. So I always, even as a kid, it's funny you mentioned handicap matches. As a kid, I always thought handicap matches were kind of dumb unless it was, I just never understood the concept because I was like, but how could these 2 guys not beat King Kong Bundy? Like he's not a giant. So it's funny. I always thought it really should be saved for just like 1 or 2 wrestlers that were supposed to be these, gigantic animals like an Andre.
But you know what? I just found an advertisement for a video where my boy Baron Mikel Cicluna did a handicap match with 2 guys against him.
Yeah.
I remember regular size Ken Patera doing handicap matches.
Yeah.
He was considered the world's strongest man. And Mighty Igor, people like that. And they weren't exactly giants. They were just super, super strong.
I'm not saying that that's not the case. I just saying from my personal opinion, it always weirded me out a little. I just thought that why should all these guys be doing the handicap match? But yeah, you're right. It's definitely something of the past because I'm trying to think now. Have they done that with any modern wrestlers?
If they have, I can't recall it. I'm sure they stick one in every so often, but you know what? They last 30 seconds and nobody remembers them. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, last 2 here. Back in my day, DQ finishes were common, particularly in cards with 7 matches or more. Now, watch on television. Now, you're not likely to see more than 2 DQs in 5 weeks. Even though people are running around the ring and there's 4-on-1s and 3-on-1s, and there's these women wrestlers now on, I guess it's SmackDown, that just came over the trio that's beating people up. And it's like the referees let the extra 2 stand by ringside. They're going to get involved, and they do get involved.
Yeah.
And it's about as exciting as cornflakes with skim milk. It's just getting so old, these outside interference things.
The outside interference thing has been an issue for so many years now. I can't even remember when it wasn't. That's how long that it's been an issue.
But I hate to cut you off. The announcers announce it like it's a strategy now.
Yeah.
Here's Joe Tessitore. Well, this is, you got to watch out for these other 2 if you're taking them on. I'm going, why should they have to look out for the other 2?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. And they do it over and over. Here's the Judgment Day interfering from the outside. Here's, the tag teams interfering. The other partner will be outside the ring and she'll run in. It's just,
it's so accepted now that it's just part of the production now. It's not even like nobody bats an eye about it. I mean, there's a DQ, there's somebody, interfering. The referee doesn't see, or he does see it, but he's not supposed to see it. They'll try to have a defense of it. The commentators, oh, well, he's using his discretion, referee discretion there, he's allowing it, something like that. I mean, that's wrestling for you.
Yeah, it's wrestling. It makes little or no sense, particularly these days. And here's the last one, and it's just 5 words. Then, house shows. Now, no house shows. That's it. What more do I need to say? I mean, I guess there's still some WWE house shows. I don't even know if AEW does anything like just a house show where there's no TV, do they?
No. And
so it's dead. The house show is gone.
There's really no WWE shows. And it's funny because that's something that's actually been in the news lately. Every once in a while, you'll see interviews with some of the WWE guys. Like I want to say maybe a Cody Rhodes or a Randy Orton. And I'm talking big names. And they'll ask him, oh, what about the house shows when it used to be this way? And I would say the majority of the wrestlers, I think AJ Styles was one of them recently. The majority of the wrestlers will say, oh, it was much better when we had the house shows. And why? Because guys were able to get better. That was a way that guys were able to improve because right now, there's not really a method. There's not really a way for these guys to wrestle night in and night out and work out the kinks and do better. But what's ironic is that a lot of the guys that are saying that now, like, oh, it was so much better when we were able to wrestle every night or 5 nights a week. I'm sure if they were wrestling full time right now, they might say the opposite. Because, I mean, that really was a grueling schedule when these guys used to be out there every single night doing a different city every night. So there's good and bad, I think, to it. There's pros and cons for sure.
Here's the other thing. The way wrestling is presented now, the fans are conditioned to see a lot of audio, video, a lot of music, big screen stuff, explosions as they enter, their own theme music, la-di-da down the list. House shows used to be a little simpler. The wrestlers would walk down the aisle, they'd announce them. They may have the theme music playing in the background. Well, there wasn't all the accoutrement that you get on television and the major shows now. So I don't know if fans were willing to accept a simpler show. You know what I'm saying? They're so used to the explosions and all this other stuff. I think that the WWE feels they need to have that on every show now. That's what any show, it has all the pyro and all the special stuff and the visual effects. Whereas, I don't know, there's something about the intimacy of the arena show or the house show, the simpleness of it, the fact that it wasn't a million, billion, gazillion dollars to get a ticket either. You know, and you're right, it keeps the wrestler sharp. How are you going to learn to wrestle if you don't wrestle?
Right.
And there's something different. You know, I'm a bowler. There's something different from practice bowling by yourself to bowling when it counts on league night. It's entirely different. It feels different. Like you may not even get a feel during practice. You're just trying to hone your skills. But when it's league night, you really concentrate. You do better because, you know, the impetus is there to win the match that you're bowling in. I imagine it's the same for wrestlers. Like when you're practicing or you're doing some, you know, some gym work with the guys or whatever, that's one thing. It's entirely different with the adrenaline, the crowd behind everything that goes on. So I agree. I think there should be more shows.
One point I'll make, though, about this, too, that's worth mentioning is when house shows were in the heyday of house shows in the past, you know, whether it's the 70s, 80s, even into the 90s, this was pre-internet and it was pre-stuff getting out. And I think one of the problems, too, now is that a lot of these house show loops at the end, when they were still running them, they were pretty much the same matches every night, same finishes, everything. And I think people just got tired of it because you figure like, okay, I'm going to go see them at the Garden tonight when they were in Philly the night before, they were in Baltimore the night before that. And it's pretty much the exact same matches and they're laid out the same way. And you might say, okay, but you didn't see it there. You know, you're going in fresh. But, you know, the way it is now with everything gets out there and, you know, you pull up, you'll go onto the website and it'll say something like, oh, this happened in this match. And, you know, this is what they're doing on the circuit. So I think it's also just a matter of it was different because I know when I started going to house shows in the 80s, there was none of that. I had no idea what was going to happen. I'm sure they did the same exact match the night before in Boston, but I had no idea. I had no way of knowing, you know, and there was something nice about that. Now, like everything else, it's all thrown out there and everybody knows about it before it happens.
You know, it's amazing. When I was in the magazines, we used to do all the stuff where they would list the match results. And I would get the match results in on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We're all the same exact thing. Right. And I know if I published all that, the promotions would get angry.
Mm-hmm.
So we would pick and choose which one we put in. We couldn't put them all in because they're all the same doggone thing. Now, I think in 2026, nobody's looking up match results anymore. Nobody, right? I mean, who's looking up match results in 2026? The sports element is so far away from what wrestling is
That's
now
true.
that I think that if you did do the same match in 5 different cities, nobody would know. Nobody's reporting. If there's probably a website somewhere that reports that stuff, but beats me. I don't think it's not in the Observer. The Observer doesn't do match results.
Well, I will say they do, and I was just going to bring that up, is that's one of the things that I joke around with one of my buddies about, because we both, you know, we both read the Observer each week, and that's one of the things that we kind of, he does it a little differently now. He does it at the end of the issue, not in the section of the organization. He'll just kind of throw in, oh, NXT results here, and he'll throw in the results. I don't really care. You know, I admit it.
But
I'm just
that
looking
was
at it.
already on TV, though. I mean, you know, it's...
Right. And it's just like that part of it just doesn't interest me anymore. Cause again, it's like, it doesn't make a difference who beats who or,
And
you know.
there's the thing. Back in my magazine days, I would... one of the things I usually got tarred with doing, even though I hated doing it, I'll be honest, all these years later, was doing a pay-per-view and timing it.
Yeah.
Doing some kind of a match play-by-play with it and then the finish and all that. And you have to do it for like 11 matches. It would take all day to write the thing. Because you're going to go back to your notes. It was like covering a baseball game, really. But you'd have to time it. I'd sit there with a stopwatch, you know, a literal stopwatch doing all that stuff.
Right.
And I'm thinking now, they don't even tell you the time of a match anytime, unless it's the Survivor Series or something like that, where if you're, excuse me, the Royal Rumble, if you're in there a long time, they time that. It's about the only thing they time anymore.
Yeah.
It was better in the old days. Our first edition of Them versus Now. And I want to thank Bob 10 Minutes From Now for his musical bent. It's terrible. Anyway, probably people shut the show off when they heard that. Anyway, Joe, you're the proprietor of GenerationXwire.com, the entertainment website where you can read stuff you're not going to read anyplace else. And I think that's groovy. I really do. I think the fact that you're not, like right now, you're not, well, you are actually. What am I talking about? You do review current films and things like that. But the celebrities you interview are off the beaten path, usually either legends of their genres from years gone by. And that's what makes it, the X-Wire part, Generation X.
We don't really do current movies, but we'll do stuff that has ties to years ago. Yeah, so we'll do retrospectives on actors that were big in the 60s, 70s, 80s, things like that. So we have a great time doing it. And the one thing that's on the site now that I would love to just get more people to look at is the Hulk Hogan Netflix special review that JC Correa did for us. Really, really in-depth, really analytical. I thought he did a really great job with it. And if anyone hasn't read it yet, please check it out.
Okay. We got Liam Savage champing at the bit to get in here. So I want to thank you again, Mr. Joe Puccio. We'll see you next time. Or listen, by the time this show comes out, there's going to be some shows on him that Joe wasn't around, but Joe's always going to be around. I just want to let you all know that. If you don't hear him for a week or two, he'll be back. Right, Joe? I mean, it's just we're taping shows in bulk because of my silly operation that's coming up. And by the time this comes out, it probably should have been done at this point. I hope I can talk and not do podcasts like this. That's the main thing, right? I think you can hear me better the other way. I could be wrong.
Hey, no, I think that's an improvement.
Is it? All right, thanks. All right, hold on, everybody. Liam Savage is coming up, and we'll be right back. It's just the two shakes. We'll be right back. Hold on. You asked for it. We're doing it again. For some reason, and this started, I think, almost 2 years ago with Howard Baum, I did a show called Howard Baum's Favorite Things. And Howard is a Serbic, as we all know. And I figured, why not turn the tables on him and just let's talk about the stuff he likes. So that's what we did. And then I did another one. And then I did another one. And we've had Steve Generelli and a bunch of other people say what their favorite things are. And they're going over. People like it. Brian R. Solomon. We're going down the list. We're going to have a lot more people, too. We had Jamie Ward. So now, back with us from wonderful, beautiful Canada. But I love Canada. I absolutely adore Canada. I have many good memories. I went to college near the New York border and would traipse up to Toronto, and I love Canada. I always will. And here's one of Canadians' favorite wrestling sons. I don't know how to put it. You may remember from Front Row Material.
There you go.
With Mikey Whipwreck, right? And who was the other person?
Mikey Whipwreck and Jerry Lynn, yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And he's been on this show, I guess this is probably your 5th or 6th appearance by this point, I would think.
6th, 7th.
Yeah, you get the red jacket. Problem is I can only afford the G.I. Joe jacket, so it's only about this big. I'm holding my thumb and forefinger apart.
I'll take it.
It's Liam Savage, or also known as Salvatore Sincere. Why?
I know Joe does that a bunch for every show, and like I was saying before, I think one of my last times, I would do that every time just to get a rise out of everybody on the old show I was on. And yeah, just because I was thinking about, really bad gimmicks in wrestling, and that was right up there.
Yeah, that was painful.
Yeah, it was really bad, but it was funny really though. So,
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
So in any event, it's a Favorite Things episode, and I have the usual 15 questions that I ask these people that I consider in the know when it comes to wrestling, or at least people who have devoted a lot of their lives to it. And you want to just get started? Let's just find out some things. Well, first of all, how's life? How's everything? Everything good?
I'm alive. So that's all that matters.
Listen, we laugh. That's a great way to be.
Yeah. But, I am going to say one thing, though, before we get started. Hopefully, when you put out this podcast and you write down the description, favorite is spelled with a U in it like we do in Canada.
How do you spell it in Canada? O-U-R?
O-U-R.
I will do that. In your honor, I will do it. I will do it. I can do anything I want. Title all these things.
I'm just messing around, but it's funny how there's a little bit of differences there. So
I never do this with anybody else's podcast. Do you know when you put a podcast out, you also do a hype sheet?
Mm-hmm.
and it's somewhere on the apps. You can read the hype sheet
Yeah.
about every single show, and I have to write that with every single show.
Yeah.
And I'll be darned if after 3.5 years to do this, if I'm not running out of ideas of how to make things sound exciting,
Yeah.
it's like, what do I write? I mean, what do I say rather than he's back or him from here or stuff like
Yeah.
that. So it gets a little daunting. And, they say that about podcasting too. You start to hit a wall and go, well, what are we going to do now? Especially if you have any legs to your podcast,
Yeah, you can hit kind of as far as just descriptions, the writer's block, I guess, just trying to make it interesting. But yeah, you start thinking sometimes, oh, what are we going to do next week? But then the minute you do that and you get under the gun, you think about 10 different things you would like to do.
Yes,
and then
it just hits you.
Yeah.
It just hits you.
Mm-hmm.
I was a songwriter too. Well, every song I ever wrote, I just hit you. It just hits you.
Right.
Bang.
Right.
Music and lyric. It's all done. You just have to write it down.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same way with this. Or I'll be talking to somebody and, oh, yeah, there's a show in that. Or, oh, this guy, maybe we'll do this. So you get it done.
That's why you always have a notepad with you, just to jot down something just in case, because you think, you know what, I'm going to forget that if I don't write it down. And then you write it down, and next thing you know, you've got like 5 things you wrote down in the course of 10 minutes, and you're good to go.
I still have 2 old 1980s reporters notebooks that still have like they're yellowed, but I saved them all these years. There's nothing in them, but I use the paper because it's convenient. It's about the size of the width of a cell phone.
Yeah.
And you would take notes. You'd write reporter shorthand in there, and then you could report it later on.
Mm-hmm.
These are the days before we used tape recorders, bub. And it's really true. It was. That's what those were for.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't see anybody using paper anymore. When I go to when I see reporters now, no use uses paper.
No, they'll use their phones, if anything, use the notepad app or something.
And they make that long one that looks like a long carrot, only it's metallic color, and they hold that up to people's faces. No, those are really good professional quality equipment. Do you remember live the first wrestling card you ever saw? The first show that maybe you and your family, or when you were a teenager, you ever went and saw?
I do remember. Now, I didn't go to any shows growing up. I just didn't. We weren't like the most well-off family in the world.
Oh, yeah, I know what that's like.
Yeah. So when I got to be in my late teens, I went with my brother actually to, I don't know if the Canadian listeners are listening, they'll know what I'm talking about. The CNE is
Canadian National Exhibition.
There you go. Yeah, in Toronto. It was called the WWF Experience because they call it the X, the CNE, the X. That's the nickname. And so they had said on the local shows and on Superstars and everything, they said they were holding a big show at the old exhibition stadium where the Blue Jays used to play. It had been shut down for a long time. They hadn't used it, but they thought, okay, we'll get some use out of it. So they packed, and it's where they actually had the big event, Orndorff against Hogan. I believe that's in the same stadium. So this was in '96, I think, and they said they were doing this big event. So they did it, and I think they put some of it on Raw. I'm not sure, but went with my brother, who's 5 years younger. We went down there and spent the day down there. There was autographs, all sorts of stuff, and so we went, and I got to see Jim Cornette versus Jose Lothario in an actual match, which still blows my mind to this day. And the main event of the night was Shawn Michaels against Goldust in a ladder match for the world title.
Wow.
Yeah, which was interesting. And I know this is like, compared to some listeners are thinking, mid-90s, whatever. But, that was my first experience and had a great time. I even tried to act like a little bit of a smart mark. So when I saw a lot of the wrestlers coming in, I saw Al Snow. He was portraying Leif Cassidy at the time in the New Rockers. And I yelled and I went, "Hey, Al Snow!" And then he looked at me and stared daggers right through me, and I almost ran. So, yeah. So that was my first experience.
I remember the CNE was a big joint in the 70s for rock concerts into the 80s, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So they stopped using it, you tell me?
Yeah. When the Blue Jays stopped playing there, and then they'd already been 5 years out by that point because the Sky Dome started around 89, I think. It was finished, and, WrestleMania was there and all that. But that's where the Jays have played ever since. Yeah, they stopped using the CNE for anything. It was just kind of derelict, just sitting there. They even had the old scoreboard up. It just hadn't been used for a long time. So I guess they thought, well, this is a good thing to draw some people in, something different. And I think they tore it down not too long after that. So
There's 3 questions that are kind of similar here.
okay.
It's going to be your favorite good guy and your favorite bad guy after this question.
Mm-hmm.
Your favorite overall wrestler. And by the way, there is no time limit on this. If it's somebody now, you can say it. And I don't care what organization, it doesn't matter. All right. We're getting to the bottom of Mr. Savage. Somebody you think is the best wrestler you ever saw.
If we're talking favorite and best I've seen, I would say they're one and the same. It's Bret Hart,
Okay.
without a shadow of a doubt. And I know there's a lot of people in the camp of Shawn Michaels, Ric Flair, and I will contend that, yes, Shawn Michaels probably is all around a much better wrestler than Bret Hart and just has a lot more style and pizzazz and all that. But as far as realism, that's what I go for. If you're very realistic in your style and you convey that and it's very hard to poke holes, that's number one for me. So whenever I would see Bret Hart, I couldn't poke holes in anything he was doing. The punches, he's had some of the best punches I've ever seen. Looks like he was about ready to knock somebody out. You do the, towards the turnbuckle where he'd hit his sternum. Looks like he would knock the wind out of himself every time. Just incredible. And just his moves would be so precise. His selling would be just excellent. Looks like he's just getting killed in the ring when something bad's happening to him. And I couldn't poke holes in anything he was ever doing. And I've had friends that have watched along the way with me, or friends that have just started watching it, and they just think, wow, this guy, he looks about as real as anybody does. That's what you want. The only person I can put maybe below that for me is Terry Funk.
Mm-hmm.
Because Terry Funk, you didn't know what you were getting with him. He would either be completely nuts and be going after the fans, or he would be crying on the mat, trying to pull up on the ropes to make a comeback. Just the emotion he would pour out.
Terry Funk knew who I was, and one of my favorite photos. I only have maybe 20 wrestling photos from the day.
Mm.
One of them is pointing at me, threatening me. I think I posted this online a while back.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's my greatest moment right there. What more could you ask for than to have Terry Funk going, are you going to interfere in my match? It was just, it's magic. So I said, no, sir. I respect you and your brother Dory greatly.
Yeah.
Well, you better. One of those deals. It was great.
I met him twice. I think I've said on a previous show. And it was just so bizarre to me because the person I saw that was completely nuts, my eye, and just screaming his head off and everything. The nicest guy in the world. He was the nicest, most humble person. And I couldn't get over it. And I was like, Mr. Funk, it's nice to meet you. Oh, it's nice to meet you too, kid. No, wow.
Not bad. It was pretty good.
He was, but he had it all going for him. I think just as far as an actual wrestler, it's Bret Hart. But like, if you really want to start breaking it down as far as someone that could do everything, it would probably be Terry Funk. Not my top favorite, but he's right there.
Probably 1A. I'll tell you what, too. Some of the matches he's remembered for, the Flair feud, all this other stuff, he was no spring chicken at that point.
No.
I mean, he started in the mid-'60s.
Yeah.
Or early 60s, actually, as I recall. So it's like to be that good that long and be timeless with his look, always in, just perfect shape. I mean, credit to the business. He lived it. I think he lived it number 2 after the Sheik in terms of what he presented while he was in the arena. The minute he walked out of that back room, he was Terry Funk.
Yeah.
And whatever Terry Funk was supposed to be that day, he's going to act that way to everybody on his way to the ring and on the way back. I seen him do stuff backstage. It was wild. I'm telling you.
Yeah, I believe it. And if you really think back to it, some of his bigger moments were in the latter part of his career. We all make the jokes about his 15 or 20 retirements, but when Terry was in All Japan with his brother, Dory, he retired in the early 80s there. And that was some of his most high profile, matches. And it was the classic, forever, the classic quote he did. That was in the early 80s. And he thought he was retiring then. Now flash forward to late 80s, early 90s, mid 90s, hell, the 2000s. And it just blows your mind how, what a career he had. It's just insane.
One of the all-time greats. His legend increases in my mind more every passing year. Because you realize what you've missed, too, what's not there anymore.
Yeah.
That's how good he was.
Absolutely.
All right, your favorite bad guy, rule breaker, mean guy, rough, tough, take no quarter, bust him open, yell at everybody, bad guy. Who did you, we'll put it this way, who did you enjoy working that craft? Your favorite rule breaker, as we used to say in PWI.
It's funny because I don't really sway one way or the other, but I always thought that Ole Anderson was just, and I know it's a little bit out of left field, but
no, it's not. That's an educated choice.
Yeah, I guess, but it always made me laugh when he turned babyface because, and it wasn't for that long, but it was just kind of like, no, that you shouldn't. You could understand what his delivery, you could understand when he was trying to be a babyface and the message he was getting across because it was believable, but you just thought, no, you should be just a real jerk. You shouldn't be acting like you're really with the fans and all that. Not that he really did, but that was what they were trying to convey, booking him that way. But he seemed so straight and to the point. Even if you really look at it, like when Sting was in the Four Horsemen, he was the whole person that said, like, we took a vote and you're not a horseman anymore and you can leave and all that. And we can do this the easy way or the hard way. You look at him and you're like, yeah, Ole's a bit of a, you know what? And then you hear all this stuff on the outside of the ring and what he was like there. And I guess it just seeped into his whole very being when he was behind the camera or even behind the scenes. And a lot of people said he was miserable, but he got it all done though.
There are certain people that even I was in the business and I had access that many fans only dream of having to these guys. And I will say this, there are certain people that you conflate what they were on camera to who they really are. And it takes you a long time to figure out that that's not who they are. Right. I don't think that was the case with Ole Anderson. Like if you said, hello, Mr. Anderson, how are you? That was him. I mean, he was just, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I think he was all business. Business.
And I'd rather someone's completely real and upfront the way they are instead of, walking through life just making concessions for people or pretending they're someone they're not just to keep the peace. You can look back to when he it's a story about when he met Vince McMahon and then his wife. You can look for the quote later because it's probably not radio friendly, but he said exactly what he thought of Linda and what he thought of Vince. He didn't care because he said, you know what? I don't like these people. And you got to respect that. I mean, it may not be the most gentle way to go about it, but you got to respect it.
I think the best wrestling visages or characters are 70% the real guy.
Sure.
The Rock, Ole Anderson. That's why I didn't like Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan was acting.
Yeah.
He was acting. Or I didn't like the way he came up once the formula set in.
Yeah.
It was the same thing over and over for 5 years, whatever it was. But you know what I'm saying? Sure. Where they, Steve Austin's another perfect example, where they let at least 50% of the real person shine in his visage. Harley Race, that was
great
him.
Example, I mean, you knew exactly where you were getting with him, in or out of the ring. No nonsense.
One of the greats again. Yeah. I just love thinking back to these guys. Now here's a question for you.
Yes.
I don't know how many live shows you've attended, and it's none of my business. But obviously, you've seen your share of live shows and been to your share of arenas up there. My question is, if you could pick any one arena that's your favorite and had your best time in for any reason, what would it be? Remember, this is places you've actually been.
It would be completely unpopular.
It's all right.
I went to quite a few indie shows. I went to an indie show at a strip club. That's where I saw Sabu against Terry Funk in one of Terry Funk's many retirement matches at a strip club. I didn't get to go to Maple Leaf Gardens. I mean, I guess I could have growing up, but I wasn't attending shows that time. I did go to the Sky Dome to see quite a few shows. That was interesting because it was such a huge building. A lot of the time you'd just be looking at kind of like, wow, look at all this, look around. And I wouldn't always be paying attention to the actual ring. There's an old hockey arena in the town I live in. It was host to a farm club for the Toronto Maple Leafs NHL team for a number of years. I saw a show there, and believe it or not, The Missing Link was one of the main events there.
Okay.
In the late 90s, if you can believe that. and maybe 2,000 people in this place, but everybody was kind of on top of each other. It was very
Intimate?
yeah, I guess intimate for lack of a better word. It was kind of cool to see a show like that. And it wasn't so big that you couldn't pay attention to everything. And it wasn't so small that you thought, oh, this is a really minor league. It was just right. Like a couple thousand people, didn't have to be crazy. And that may sound a little weird, but I don't want it to be so indie that I have to see it at a bar, which I have.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want it to be so indie and obscure that I see it at a strip club, which I have. I just want it to be at a decent kind of arena, and that's what I saw it at, and I thought that was really cool because everybody was intimate, as you say.
Okay, but what was it called?
It was called the Newmarket Recreation Complex, and now it's called the Ray 20 Recreation Complex. And yeah, that was, like I said, where the Leafs farm team used to play, and I saw a couple of games there. I saw a couple of wrestling shows there, and it was pretty interesting. Apparently, WWF went there during their lean years, early to mid 90s, and did quite a few shows there too, as one of my friends had told me.
Small arenas are great.
Yeah.
That's why people love the UCW arena. That's why I loved an Armory in Albany. It doesn't have to be a palace. It just has to be good sight lines, a good Frankfurter, and a lot of hot action. That's all you need.
Yeah.
I used to sit on wooden chairs, my friend, wooden folding chairs. And I miss it more than I miss anything I ever saw at, let's say, the Nassau Coliseum or something like that. Because the intimacy, like you said.
Absolutely.
You felt you're right on top of things.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. The one match that you consider the best match you ever saw. It could be, again, it doesn't even have to be, it could be in a house show, it could be on a pay-per-view, it could be a WrestleMania thing, anything. Like the one match you go, boy, I'd love to see that again.
There is one that I always come back to, and it's going to be something nobody's going to be expecting. It was in Japan, not anything current. All Japan Pro Wrestling had an exodus of their talent. They started Pro Wrestling Noah, which is still going. There's only a couple of people that stayed back with All Japan and tried to keep it going, and one of them was Toshiaki Kawada, and he was one of the what they call the four pillars, which AEW ended up ripping off the name, but he was one of the four pillars there, some of the greatest wrestlers in the world. And he went to New Japan, which was completely nuts at the time. He went over there, challenged Kensuke Sasaki, who was in WCW, challenged him to a match. So it was kind of the two big giants of each promotion going against each other in the Tokyo Dome. It was just, the fanfare was just crazy. There was probably 70,000 people there. It was absolutely nuts. It's one of those matches where I'm the type that likes the realism. I don't care if you do a million moves. I need to see that it's all going to be put together and actually go somewhere, but it doesn't have to be over the top. These guys it was just a test of strength. I'm representing this company. Let's go at it. The fact that they were hitting hard, it was a lot of clotheslines and kicks and stuff like that, but it wasn't anything completely over the top. But the emotion and the crowd just going completely nuts. It's one of those ones I always go back to because it always gives me this great feeling of just seeing these two men in their prime just duking it out. Two generational talents just going after each other. And I know it sounds a little different because a lot of people always go back to I saw this Ric Flair match, or I saw this Jack Briscoe match. But this match, just every time I see it, the intensity and everything that comes off it is just like nothing I've ever seen before.
Oh, that's a heck of a choice. I enjoyed just hearing you talk about that. Seriously, because it's like when you sit back when it's over and you go, I could watch that again, or I went another half hour, just keep going, because if it's that good, those things are rare. I mean, particularly these days, everything is so overbooked and, there's outside interference every third minute and everything like that. If it was just two great wrestlers going at it as hard as they could, sometimes that's all you need.
Yeah, it didn't hurt the fact that the backstory was that it was a huge dream match. Those two companies, New Japan, All Japan, they didn't really do a lot with each other. They had defections going back and forth to different companies sometimes, but this company against this company, and then they start fighting each other. It was, the crowd was just going crazy, and it was a New Japan crowd. So a lot of the fans were throwing stuff at Kawada as he was coming down the ramp in the Tokyo Dome, just pelting him with stuff because it's like, oh, you're not from here. You don't belong here. And he wowed the crowd, just showing that style. They would just go full tilt all the time, sometimes to their detriment because you would see how terrible their injuries were, how they're walking like they need a new hip after a while, but because it would take a lot out of that style. But it was excellent.
Your favorite single event. In other words, could be a pay-per-view, could be a house show, could be something they showed on TV. If you could go back and watch a card, an event that you go, "Boy, that one was great," what would it be?
That's an interesting question. I would say if I really get down to it, and it's more the memories and the feeling I get. WrestleMania 6 growing up at the Sky Dome. A lot of people look at that and say, well, I mean, it wasn't that great of a show, and it maybe not, but it was more the feeling I got.
Just remember, this is your favorite.
Yeah,
It doesn't
no,
matter what
for sure.
everybody else in the world
No,
thinks.
but I tend to look at things a little bit differently than some people do as far as my choices. So some people might be going, "What is he talking about?" And also WrestleMania 6 might be a bit of a safe choice just based on the Hogan Warrior match, maybe. But there was a lot going on, and Demolition won the tag titles, I believe. It was like the last big show that they had before everything started to go downhill as far as, Sergeant Slaughter coming back and the whole Iraqi thing. And that just was, we don't need to dwell on that really, but popularity was starting to decline after that. Warrior didn't work out as a champion really to a lot of people. If you really get down to it, that's kind of where the beginning of the end started until kind of late 90s. It was probably the last big hurrah as far as, I guess they would call it the golden era of the 80s and early 90s, and how it was starting to implode on itself because it had just gotten too big. People were kind of waiting for the new thing, and then they didn't like what they saw, and they kind of went, I think I'm done with this for a while, and walked away. I was one of them, admittedly. I took a long break watching. I would dip in from time to time, but I took a long break after this. But as far as if it's a card that I actually really enjoyed, though, just beginning to end, I would say, and a lot of people bring this up, and as far as the late 90s goes, ECW's Heat Wave 98 was a great show. The hardcore stuff doesn't age as well now, not nearly as much, but it had a really good variety of matches. And, you open it with Justin Incredible versus Jerry Lynn in a just excellent technical match, to Hayabusa and Shinzaki from Japan going against Sabu and Rob Van Dam. And that's kind of a dream match there. And Bam Bam Bigelow against Taz, where he goes through the ramp, and DDTs him through the ramp. And, lots of really, really crazy memories happening there. And it was just, as far as a show goes, it was very complete, and it had something for everybody. And I didn't get bored watching it. It may not be super old school sounding. I mean, I guess these days anything is really, but, as far as the show, that was great too. Really good, complete show.
All right. I hope this one doesn't take a long time to answer, but if you could, you've been watching, what, 20 years, something like that?
I've been watching since 86, around there.
All right. So that's a long time.
Yeah.
What's your favorite year in wrestling? If you could go back to one period that really rang your bell and you were really happy with everything you were looking at. Because listen, when I was with PWI, we used to get stacks of videotapes. I watched every videotape and enjoyed every one of them.
Yeah.
Because I was into it. It was my thing. So did you ever have a moment in time where you go, boy, that was a great card, and then the NWA had a great card, and the AWA had a great card, or whatever it may be? If you look back and you thought the year as a whole satisfied you as a fan, what year would that be?
I would say 1997. I had walked away for quite a while after, like I said previously, after 1990. Didn't do it for me as much anymore. And it wasn't that I wasn't seeing other stuff. I just wasn't in the right mind frame to watch it. So I kind of came back at the end of 95, which some people are going to say, like, why did you come back then? I don't know. I just did. It wasn't just the Monday Night Wars thing for me like that, because we didn't get Nitro. We didn't get to watch it. You'd have to tape trade for it, because where I lived, they just didn't have it. We had TBS, so we could see some of the Turner stuff, WCW and all that. And growing up, I even got AWA, and a lot of other stuff too. But in 1997, it was the end of the old guard, and it was kind of ushering in the new guard. It was in that nice sweet spot for me. And I was not a fan of the Attitude Era. That's when I stopped watching again for a number of years, because it just got too ridiculous for me. And I think a lot of people look back on it now like that. But 97 was just kind of the sweet spot where there was enough of the old school stuff going on, but it was starting to not be as predictable. You'd have lots of different surprises. You'd watch Raw some weeks, and just something you wouldn't expect. Like, here's the Legion of Doom back out of nowhere. Okay, great. And then, you would get new stars coming in. You would have the light heavyweight division out of nowhere. They'd have luchadors. They had some great tag team wrestling. They had Furnace and LaFon, which weren't looked back as a great team as far as WWF goes, but it was exciting for me. The Hart Foundation, just like masterclass by Bret Hart as far as how to engage a crowd. And he was just in his prime at that point, just absolutely, just incredible. Steve Austin in his rise, Shawn Michaels going back and forth between engaging the crowd, but then kind of slacking off a bit and then losing his smile and all that stuff. It was a crazy year. And I've heard other people reference it too, but for me, it was just, I always look forward to seeing what would happen each week. The internet hadn't ruined everything yet. I would watch a show and generally get surprised by something that I wouldn't expect to happen. It was just this really nice cross section. Like I said, the sweet spot. The old school was still there. The new school was coming in. Nothing had been totally ruined yet. Obviously, that would happen after the screw job and kind of leading into that, the Montreal screw job. But yeah, that for me is always a sweet spot. I love it.
All right, I'm going to take a right turn on you. Everybody laughs when I ask this question.
All right.
You're at the arena or your local wrestling club or wherever you're watching wrestling. What's your favorite food? If you're watching wrestling, you want to munch on something. What do you like best? Or it could be a beer. Whatever is your favorite thing at a wrestling match. If you're going to chew on something, what's it going to be?
Well, I won't mention the beer because I had friends that would get drunk and they'd try to hit me with steel chairs and stuff in the
Oh god
near the end of the show, and I just think like, okay, we're losing the plot here. Nachos are always good because it's different. It's not a hot dog. It's not a burger.
Not too hard to eat. Nachos
No.
at the show. You got to have it on your lap, right?
Good to throw at people too. You can take a chip and just throw it at someone, right? No, I'm just kidding. I'm a good boy. It's not hot dogs. It's not burgers. It's something different. I like it.
You would like baseball now because they put the nachos in a helmet now.
Oh, do they?
The whole helmet full of nachos and whatever you want on them. It's spectacular.
Now, do you get to use the helmet after?
Yeah, you could clean it, and it's a small helmet. It's certainly not a regulation helmet, but it's a keepsake anyway, and it's got your favorite logo on it.
Yeah, I just picture people at the end of that, they toss the rest of the nachos out and they put it on their head or something and go running around.
Oh, absolutely. You see it at every ballpark you go to. Absolutely. Somebody goes to the men's room, cleans it all out, sticks it on their head. Look at me, guys, and then laughs ensue. Yes, they do. All right. You read the wrestling books at all?
Yeah.
It could be new, it could be old.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you your favorite wrestling book. Now, there's a clear leader in the people that I've asked about this, so it'll be interesting to see what you come up with. It could be new, it could be old. Actually, there are no such thing as good old wrestling books. It all started around the mid-'90s when the good books started.
The newer stuff, I don't have time to read a lot of the time. I just don't. Trust me, I'd love to pick up some of Brian R. Solomon's books and a lot of other people. A lot of it fascinates me, but I just don't have the time. I have a stack right now that I haven't gotten into, but I did find Mick Foley's first book to be riveting.
That's the one.
Oh, is it? Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
It was great.
Have a nice day.
Foley is good, I think was the second one.
Right.
But the first book was it was great because he has a really interesting writing style and self-deprecating, but humorous, but also very serious when he needs to as well. It would really draw you in because you felt like you were there when you were reading what he would say. Like, he'd say, taking the nesty plunge off the ring apron onto the floor and in a cold concrete floor. And he would always repeat it. And I just like, oh yeah, now it's making more sense. And it gets in your head thinking, yeah, this isn't a joke. So when you would read that and you'd read his backstory and what a nice guy he is and everything, it was very endearing to me. Going back to Bret Hart, I read his book as well. That was excellent. But the only problem I have nowadays, looking back at it, is he seems to have this tendency to remember things differently sometimes than other people remember it. It's not all the time. It's not like Ric Flair or Hulk Hogan level, but sometimes you could think, oh, well, he said something differently about 5 years ago. So when I look back at his book, I really enjoyed it, and a lot of it was very eye-opening. But he also, I don't know if everything was 100% accurate that he was saying. Especially nowadays, I don't know if you've seen everything with Diana Hart, Davey Boy Smith's ex-wife, and she had written all this stuff lately saying about how he misrepresented himself. Brett represented himself saying things about Davey Boy Smith during their SummerSlam match and how he had everything completely wrong, and she's trying to show documentation and all that. So it started to make me think a little bit about that. Great book, but nowadays I'm starting to think, I don't know if I should read it again and see if I'm getting differing opinions from other people on how stories went and things of that nature.
Yeah, old rockers are like that too.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
I can name a certain Canadian who has embellished the story more and more about what happened in the '60s. The more he tells the story, the more wild it gets. I'm not gonna besmirch him by bringing it up here, but I just noticed every time he brings up a tale about how this song got like, the story gets out there and more out there and more out there. It's you know what? A
Yeah.
lot of it's aging too.
Oh,
It
sure.
really is.
Yeah.
The memory changes.
Mhm.
I mean, I have a pretty good memory there, Phil, but, it's that was supposed to be a joke. All right. This next question doesn't have to be anything I was involved with. It's not the meaning of the question. I don't know if you read wrestling magazines growing up or even as
Did.
an adult. And if you did, what's your favorite wrestling magazine from the day? And if it's, I don't care what it is. It doesn't have to be PWI. It could be one of the competitors. I really don't care. It's just, and I know you were into the newsletter era.
Yeah.
Pretty much for your whole fandom, being that you're the age that you are. So
Yeah.
if you did read a wrestling magazine, how did it affect you and why did you like that particular one?
Well, it would be a tie between PWI and The Wrestler. I managed to find The Wrestler a lot for some reason on the newsstands, so I would go to that a lot. So maybe that's more of where that choice comes from. But PWI, I would go on trips with my family and take like a stack of them with me and read them constantly. It was where I would start to realize that there was a bigger world outside of the Toronto kind of territory. Not just Toronto, but, Calgary and like just as far as my home countries, Calgary, there's the Maritimes, there's Vancouver. And then you start looking at the States and beyond, and it's like, wow, there's a lot going on. That really helped shape me as far as learning about the industry and what was out there and started pointing me in the right direction of some things to look forward to. If someone would come into a WWF or AWA or something, and I would look in the magazine, I'd say, oh yeah, I think I've read about them. I remember reading about them or seeing pictures of them. Oh, and I was thinking, and that'd be really cool to see them in living color. And then you do. Young kids won't understand that. It's a different era now. They can see anything they want. You had to wait a lot of times, sometimes a year or two, just to see someone you really wanted to see just based on looking at them in the magazines. And then when you see it, and sometimes it wouldn't be as good as you imagined, but other times it was even better.
Very good. All right. Favorite female wrestler? And then, again, this could be any time period, and you'd be shocked at who was number one so far that people like the best. If you could watch one woman wrestler, who would it be?
Growing up, I thought Medusa was one of the better ones I've ever seen. As far as all time, and I know it's the present day, but Charlotte Flair is far and above for me. Even, and I know it's sacrilege to some people, a lot of people lean on Rhea Ripley now, but something about Charlotte Flair, she has everything. She is perfect.
Was there ever a better match than the WrestleMania match between Charlotte and Rhea Ripley? That was really special.
Excellent. Yeah.
It really was.
And she brought out the best out of Ronda Rousey as well. If you ever remember that match, they had a Survivor Series. Excellent. Best Ronda Rousey match I'd seen besides her debut match at WrestleMania, which was, put together great. Charlotte Flair, she kind of has it all. It's not just the beauty and all that and her mic skills and all that. Well, yeah, which can vary, but she has delivered some strong promos, I think. Everything she does in the ring, sometimes I find myself watching her and getting more interested in her matches than her dad's. Nothing against her dad. You would know what you're getting every time. And that's kind of funny for me to say as a Bret Hart fan, because you would always know where he's going, kind of what moves he was going to pull out, the same moves and all that. But Charlotte, she conditions herself to each opponent, just kind of move the match to what would fit with them. And it can be a power match. It can be a very technical match, but she finds a way to do it properly every time.
What you just said is what they used to say about Harley Race. He would adjust his style to the opponent and know it going into the match.
You got it.
Which is what made him the legend he was. Mm-hmm. But you know what else was another great series with Charlotte? Nobody talked about this anymore either. The Sasha Banks series was excellent.
Yeah, they were great too.
They really were. They were excellent.
Yeah, they weren't my favorite ones, but she's a generational talent. I know that's thrown around a lot, but she really is in more ways than one, obviously, because of her dad, but she just gets it. And it makes me sad to think that she's in her prime now, but she'll leave eventually, probably in 5 years, just based on how much stuff she's doing, and you won't get to see those matches anymore. I know she had to take a step back, I guess, to do tag team wrestling. It is a step back for her because she can do so much more than that. But maybe that'll make us all appreciate her that much more with how much she can do in the ring when she's in singles competition.
They're going to feud anyway.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's
Alexa,
inevitable.
it's so obvious. We're making little hearts and we love each other and
Yeah.
we're best friends now. No, they're going to feud. There's no question.
It's a tale as old as time. It's inevitable, but and that'll be fine. But I'm not a big Alexa Bliss fan, but she's all right. She does the job, I guess. But
I think she's very talented. It's just that I have this thing. I'm sorry, when you're that diminutive. No, seriously, and a few of the others, they're so small that I mean, stand her next to Charlotte. I mean, that's it. That's all. What else do I need to say?
Yeah.
All right, your favorite territory. Trouble is, you were in your prime when the territories were eroding. But if you could watch, or we'll call this a favorite organization. All the guys my age, we had the AWA, you had the small federation over here, you had Florida, you had Calgary, you had the Continental. We had all that.
Yeah.
You're not lucky enough to have all that. So I'll say your favorite organization overall. Just the one you really look forward to watching all the time.
I mean, Northeast, right? So, I mean, WWF growing up, right? But if I pick something that's different, and no, I'm not going to go with the AWA, I'm sorry, because when I started watching it, that's when it was on its downslide. I appreciate a lot of it, but it was on its downslide when I was starting to really get into stuff. I think Calgary Stampede Wrestling was different because there was a lot of different things going on there. They had high flying, they had brawlers, they had technical, they had...
You know what makes me sad? I started PWI in 88.
Yes.
And I think Calgary was gone by 89, if my memory serves.
89, 90, around there, yeah.
Yeah. It was a really good show. It held your interest. Nobody had ever heard of most of the people on it, but they all really held their own. The level of talent there was excellent.
Yep.
And, of course, just enough drama with people. Owen was big at that point and everything else. I thought it was exceedingly underrated only because nobody had a chance to see it, but I did. I was lucky enough to get those tapes every week.
Yeah.
I missed it greatly when it was over. That was the first crack for me, and then Smoky Mountain went under and Continental went under, and one by one, while I was there,
Yeah.
I was starting to think it was a bad luck charm because it's like everything I was covering was starting to go away.
It was weird because I guess growing up where I was, we get a lot of the channels, and we even got TBS, believe it or not, if you paid the extra to get it on your cable each month. So I could see Crockett sometimes. Not all the time, but, it depended if my parents wanted to pay that bill that month or not. But we ended up getting Stampede Wrestling on TSN, and we ended up getting Wrestling Vancouver, Al Tomko. It seemed like it was hit or miss when I would catch it. But I remember I was kind of intrigued because it wasn't WWF, and I'm like a kid watching, and I'm like, oh, this isn't what I'm used to. And then also thinking, this is really low budget. And it had its own kind of charm, but at the same time, it was just, there's like the big leagues, and then there's like below the farm leagues, and this is probably it.
When I was with PWI, we would also get the 8-hour wrestling block from Joe Pedicino in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And he had a thing called George's something. My mind escapes me. And it was over. But they had guys like early Sid Vicious and Nick Busick and early New Jack.
Sure.
Crazy. And I loved the thing. It was in a place called the Auction Barn, I think, where they would wrestle. And there'd be like 35 people there, but I still enjoyed the show. It may have seemed podunk to others, but I could see the quality that was there. Some of the guys were really good.
Yeah.
That was an era where you could look at something smaller and not say, oh, this is terrible. It's not worth my time. Something would fascinate you to the point where you couldn't shut it off.
That's the thing. I didn't get into a lot of the territories until I started tape trading in the mid to late 90s. And when I started tape trading, you see things like Mid-South, you would see USWA, you would see stuff from California, you could see Memphis, any number of things, and just think like, man, there is this world out there that I wasn't aware of. Some of it has its own flavor. Portland had its own flavor. AWA had its own flavor. And that's what made it all unique. That's why I would always be trying to get my hands on new stuff because, and that's how I learned about Japanese wrestling, Mexican wrestling and all that. I'm not a big fan of the lucha style, but I got to see it. I really developed a huge appreciation for Japanese wrestling after watching those tapes I would get. A lot of them look like absolutely terrible quality, but you could kind of get the gist of it because
Yeah,
someone recorded over it so many times.
as
But
long as you can see it. Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Remember the lines that would get the orange line that would go across the
yeah,
screen when the tape started to get old and, "Oh
yeah.
my god, I gotta spend another $4 on the VHS," or whatever it was,
I
right?
remember I got it was called The Best of British Bulldogs in Japan, and I got a tape, and it must have been a 5th or 6th generation tape. You would understand that, not everybody will. Meaning it had been copied so many different times that the actual master was great, and this had been degraded so much, but I'm still watching it going like, I can kinda make out what's going on. This still looks good, but that was the conundrum we had back then. You would have something you really wanna get your hands on. It's like, well, the quality isn't that great. Alright, I'll settle for it. Need to watch it.
I watch stuff that people plastered on YouTube today, and you have it would all go black and white for a second, get
Yeah,
all jumbly, and
yeah,
you'd see an aux on the AUX on the corner from the
yeah.
VHS machine messing up, and I still watch that stuff.
Sure,
That's how much I like my era stuff. I can't
sure.
help it.
Yeah.
All right, last question. Your favorite weekly wrestling TV show? Like one that you would watch every single week. It could be any organization. The one you would sit down once a week and go, "Oh, I gotta see this week." What was it?
Well, it's formative. It was, WWF Superstars of Wrestling, Channel 29 in Buffalo, New York. That's when I first fell in love with watching the stuff. It became appointment television for me. I always knew Saturday at noon, that's when it would be on. I would always be able to see it. And then the bonus was if you could stay up really late some night, every once in a blue moon and watch Saturday night's main event. So that really kind of was the thing I would look forward to every week. And Superstars was great. Not as much these days when you look back at it because you're like, well, there's a bunch of squash matches, and as a kid, I would always say, "Why isn't Hulk on this? Why isn't Hulk on this?" And he was very rarely on any episodes, but they would show a little glimpse of him every now and then, and you go, "Oh, okay, there he is."
You'd get the interview, right?
Yeah, yeah, if you're lucky, and so that makes more sense to me nowadays. But back then I was kind of fiending to see all my favorites, and not all of them would be on. But it was great because you wouldn't know what was coming up next week. They would kind of give you a little hint, but it's like, oh man, I gotta watch it next week. If I don't watch it, and we didn't always have a VCR, I'd miss out. It's those very early vivid memories for me of like Jimmy Hart coming down to the ring, and that's what started for me because I saw these weird characters that I thought like, I don't know what the hell's going on, but I got to see what happens next week. It would stir something inside me, and it echoes with a lot of the fans out there. Same thing. That's kind of where it starts from. You look at it and you go, "What the hell am I watching?" And then you watch it and you're like, "I don't know if I like this, but I'm kind of intrigued enough to see more." And then when you watch more, then next thing you know, you're engrossed in it, and you're annoying every one of your family members going, "Did you see the match with it?" And they're like, "Okay, Liam, calm down," and then usher me out of the room. Yeah, it was always Superstars of Wrestling for me.
That is the kid thing. That
Yeah.
you kind of brought it out in that. What is all this weird stuff?
Yeah.
And you go, part of you will go, "Oh God, that's really rough. I'm not so sure I like this, but I got to tune in next week to see what he does next week."
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, you can
Only
only
wrestling does it. It repels you and attracts you at the same
yeah.
time.
You can only watch so many cartoons at that age and,
Right.
Sesame Street and all that stuff. And then you see this thing that's like looks like actual superheroes walking out from behind an apron, clobbering someone, and you think, "What the hell is this?" As a
Yeah.
kid, you're just transfixed, and you gotta keep watching.
I would wager that pro wrestling kids went right from Bugs Bunny to pro wrestling. I'm telling you.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
telling you because of the time. Bugs Bunny was usually on the network around 11 o'clock or noon or something like that, and
Yep.
then wrestling would come on, and soon you weaned yourself off of Elmer Fudd and you start watching, Baron von Raschke.
Yeah.
What can I tell you?
No, that
What
was
can I
me.
do?
That was me in a
Yeah, that's
nutshell.
everybody. That's all of us, man, and those are the times when it was special. It was
Mhm.
different. It was your thing,
It was my
and
thing.
wrestling was not cool in those days. It started to get cool in the '80s. It
Yeah.
did.
It got a bit cooler when I was going to school and everything, and it waned after a while, but, it always kinda held a special place in my heart, and that's why I ended up coming back to it, like, years later and getting really into it again, and it's one of those, like, weird kind of addictions, it's one of those addictions where you can't shake it.
I do not watch episodic television. I haven't since high school. This is the truth.
Yeah.
It holds no charm for me. I'll watch a movie to spend 5 nights a week from 8 to 11 watching up. To me, that's a waste of life. I'm sorry, I've always felt it's a waste of life. I could watch the wrestling I watched in 1975 on YouTube and go, "Oh gosh, I remember this. Oh, I remember that." And it makes you feel like you're 15 or whatever it was, or
Sure.
14 or
Yeah.
whatever it was. That's magic to me. There's something magic about this stuff. And
Mhm.
I'm sure that there are some people today, the young kids who are discovering it, feel the exact same way. You and I look at it and go, "Oh my God, they're ruining it."
Yeah.
But to them, this is the new stuff. This is their era. And that's why I can't lambast kids for liking what they like, be it
No, no.
AEW or WWE or anything else that's out there, because that's what they have. That's their thing. And we all have our eras. You know me, I'm always on my soapbox about ridiculous spots,
No,
really
yeah, me
ridiculous
too.
spots.
Me too, yeah.
God, somebody released a videotape of somebody literally in a catacomb and diving into about 20 wrestlers below. I swear, it looked like it was about 30 feet down. I'm like, "What are you
Nothing
people
surprises me.
doing?" You know,
Yeah.
somebody's gonna get effed up.
Nothing surprises me anymore.
I'm gonna shut up about it because I'm probably beating a dead horse, and my listeners are probably sick of it. "Bob, we know you don't like the kids. Talk about Ilio DiPaolo." You know,
There you go.
it's that's my curse because you
Oh,
know what? We're all here to give thanks, and I wanna give thanks to you for coming back on and spilling out your passions for us all to hear, and it's refreshing because it's like, how do you feel just sitting there knowing you're looking back at all the coolest stuff that you saw? Do you feel like 10 years younger?
mm, not so much because I'm feeling my body right now. So no, it's I'm feeling all the aches
Yeah,
and pains. But no, but it is good to relive that stuff because
it is.
you have to be able to go back to what made you a fan and say, even if you look at the stuff today and say, "Oh my god, that's terrible," or "Oh, why'd they do that? Where's the psychology?" And all
Yeah,
that.
that's me. That's
But
me.
then you look back and you go, "Oh, you know what? I remember this time when this happened and this was great." And then, "Oh, I saw this match that really gripped me and that was awesome." You have to pick and choose what you do like. It doesn't hurt to try to find what you do like these days too. It's just few and far between for me and I'm sure for you as well.
Give me Gunther against anybody.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
100%.
about my enjoyment scheme these days. Because they ruin other people, and other people will get pushed 30 years after their primes and stuff, and it bores me. But show me a good wrestling match, and Gunther provides good wrestling matches. That's
It's
what it is.
it's not just him though. I think maybe I appreciate CM Punk so much more these days because I think he's a year younger than me, but he resonates with me as far as he loves to acknowledge the old school. He still wrestles like a wrestler. He doesn't have to do everything crazy and he's very real and things like that. Wrestlers like that are what still get me to watch. I was front row center watching his match at WrestleMania and it was excellent. It was a great match. Just being able to put on a great match without like doing 100 dives and all that. And just being a very realistic person where he blurs the lines and you got to respect that and it makes you interested. And that's what does it for me. If you can blur the lines and interest me, then great. If it's something where you can tell what they're going to do a mile away, just get out of here.
Nobody tap dances on a tightrope better than CM Punk. That's the way I put it. Good way to put it, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it's
no,
like
yeah, yeah.
without going too far, without slipping, he manages to just keep it right there, and that's his
Yep.
skill.
Yeah,
And keep the audience riveted. That's the other skill he's got.
absolutely. Yeah.
Well, speaking of riveted, how can people find you? Facebook, whatever. Just hype yourself for a second, and we'll see if we can get people to look your way.
If you really want to talk to me, I mean, that's at your own risk, people. I don't know what you're thinking, but if you really want to talk to me, look up my name, Liam Savage. You'll see my ugly mug on there with my profile picture, and you'll know it's me. And then you can say, "Hey, I really didn't like what you had to say on the show," or "Man, that was spot on." And I'll just say, "Hey, thanks for tuning in." I'm not really doing much else besides that, but there's ways to get in touch with me that way, and we can touch base.
I will chime in on a Facebook thread about things.
Mhm.
Oh no, it was something I wrote. I think it was a screed. I was upset about something, and somebody wrote, and I'm quoting, "This is all I need is some random guy named Bob mouthing off. Why do you stop watching? You don't like it." Now, here's the beauty part. People rushed to my defense and they said, "Do you know who this is?"
Yeah. Yeah.
They were like, "Do you realize who you just were talking about?" And
Yeah.
he obviously didn't. You know what? I have the world's dullest name. So it's like if you hadn't heard that I was with PWI or a guy named Bob Smith, who would know? So and he's entitled to his opinion too, but it was like some random guy named Bob, and I was like, okay.
Yeah,
I gotta get more listeners.
yeah. If I'm on a something along the same lines, and they say, well, and it's something about a podcast, and what do you know about podcasting? I was like, well, I did it with two wrestlers. I don't know what you're. Yeah, maybe if you ask me, what do you know, and I could say this is what I know, and oh, okay. But it's fine. I don't care. I don't put my name out there like that. And if people want to come at you and act like they know more than you, great. Let them. It's the internet. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. And
No.
you know what? Sometimes you can just sit back, not respond, and enjoy the crow sandwich. Let him eat crow.
That's one way to put it. Yeah.
That's right. Ladies and gentlemen, he's back. He's Liam Savage. It's good to see you. But listen, wishing you and yours happiness, good health. We'll talk soon. How's that sound?
Yeah, absolutely. Same to you. Thank you.
Liam Savage. We'll be right back. I'm going to read some stuff that came in recently from 2 or 3 of our listeners, and I hope you get a kick out of this. We will read what you have to say on the air because your voice matters to us. It really does, no matter what you have to say, good, bad, or indifferent. Here's a letter from our friend Ron Kirkman, who wrote a few weeks ago. Dear Bob, I was so sad to hear of the passing of Flying Fred Curry. As a fan from the Detroit area, I have seen so many Flying Fred Curry matches, I couldn't count them all. I'm sure you feel the same way when a beloved wrestler passed away that you saw growing up. Fred was not the greatest worker, but for me at 67 years old, a piece of my childhood has gone away. So sad. Love your podcast. I hope you don't stop. Keep up the great work. All the best, Ron Kirkman. Ron, thank you so much. Here's a letter from Arthur Ford, again from a few weeks ago. Hi, Bob. First off, I want to thank you for the fun podcast. I haven't written before, but I have been listening for a while. What prompted me to write was the latest episode with your discussion with Steve Gennarelli about being turned off by modern wrestling. This was right after WrestleMania, by the way. I know many of us listeners could relate. As a huge fan from the 80s and into the 90s, I don't watch today's WWE, AEW, etc. at all. But your comments about modern indies made me say, hey, wait. I do, however, attend indie shows regularly, and if you aren't familiar, I think my favorite promotion might be one you would like as well. I have been to many of their events, and I can say that it feels just like attending an independent event in the 80s or 90s. Of course, that means not all the matches or wrestlers were or are great, but the live show feeling is of another era, and I most certainly mean that in a good way. It's ECPW, which runs in New Jersey, where I am, Hudson Valley, New York, and the NYC area. News to me. It really is. He continues. If you haven't, check out their website at ecpw1.com. Jimmy Snuka is a former ECPW champ. If the website doesn't work, try again later. It's just like that, but why wouldn't it be? It's a great comment. Again, thanks for the show and all the best, Arthur. Great tip. I'm from the Hudson Valley originally myself. I may have to check that out very, very soon. And I'm being serious about that because I'm hankering for some live action from April 24th from a gentleman named Bill Baldwin. Guess I was lucky. We had company and I missed WrestleMania on Saturday night. You can see when this was written. I really thought Sunday was a decent show considering what the WWE does these days. The combination of ESPN and Roku was pretty bad, though. I missed the first match and most of the second because the feed I was watching was an hour behind, and the show was that far along when I figured it out. Then I had to get out and get back in a couple times during the show. No big deal, but I shouldn't have had to. Bill, you're right on the money. I always keep your show on my playlist in the gym and always enjoy it when it comes to the top. Sometimes, like today, I cheat and listen when it comes out. Looking forward to the book. Signed, Bill Baldwin. Bill, thanks so much, my friend. Really great comments. Yeah, I think most of us were really disappointed with the feed of WrestleMania on both days. Crazy considering how much people pay for this stuff, isn't it? Attention, Gen Xers. If you'd like to explore the era that appeals to you, look no further than GenerationXWire.com. The generation who grew up with elite in entertainment, music, movies, TV, books, pro wrestling, and more finally has a one-stop destination for all their Gen X needs. From Aerosmith to Batman to the Killer Bees to the Twilight Zone, there's something for everybody at GenerationXWire.com. You won't find a more eclectic mix of pop culture content than at the leading website that specializes in the greatest generation, GenerationXWire.com. Check it out today. We hope you enjoyed this edition of the Outdated Wrestling Hour. Thank you once again to our good friend Liam Savage from Canada Way, as Jack Reynolds would say. Yeah, Liam's a great cat. He really is. When you read his opinions on Facebook in the wrestling threads, he could be a little, opinionated and maybe just a tad acerbic. But when you get to know him, he's cooler than a 12-pack of two-stick popsicles. Mentioned twice on one show. How do you like that? Anyway, we're going to wrap this one up here. Thank you once again to Joe Puccio, too, for biting my gripes about old versus new. Anyway, let's get on to our usual pleasantries. Write to us, outdatedwrestling@gmail.com. Find us on Facebook. I'm the only Bob Smith singing with BB King. We're also at Threads, Instagram. Instagram's a great place to go for some unique promos that we do. X, Blue Sky, and the list goes on. Again, I'm Bob Smith, and I have longish hair in my photo icon, or whatever they call it, my avatar. So look for us, please. The Outdated Wrestling Hour and the Outdated Entertainment Hour are productions of Bob Smith Podcast. The Outdated Wrestling Hour is affiliated with the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. I think that's it for now. I hope you had a good time. I know we always do putting these favorite things shows together. My name is Bob Smith for Joe Puccio and myself. Thanks for being here. And Ringo Starr always gives thanks. I think he's going to be making some concert appearances this year, too. At the end of every show, he says, peace and love, brothers and sisters. Peace and love.